Today's episode is sponsored by our friends at EGS Grading Services. Hey, if you're looking for unique custom labels as well as new slabs, EGS is the graders collector's choice. Hello and welcome to another exciting episode of Codename New 202. Hi, I'm your presenter, Shibu RU, and I'm ecstatic we're going to do our first EGS unboxing for 2023. That's right. And boy, did we end 2022 off a really good note with the introduction of the new EGS slabs. Now, these are a game changer because of the fact that there's a lot more that I like to educate people that goes into this than just what you see. I mean, for a small company to be able to generate their own slabs is a feat unto itself. When you think about the legality of it, I mean, you got to create it, get a US patent, you got to find someone to mass produce this item. Then you got to go through someone that provides you with the sample and seeing if that sample passes or fails, whether it meets all of your needs as a retailer. And then you got to get it out to the customer. All that takes a lot of money, time, patience, and dedication. Now, when you're a company like CGC, a major corporation, that may be just file it off to different departments and so on. But when you're a small family-run business, it takes a lot of your own resources in order to pull this off. And that's why I support EGS, is because I know what goes into it. As a former government auditor, like I know all the processes that goes along. It just shows the dedication for EGS owner Tony to invest in himself, but he's going up against a huge giant as far as CGC. And we all know CGC is basically in a position where they could take a crap in a box and people will buy it without question. And again, that's why I support both EGS and PGX, is because they're the fabric of what America is about. And that's why I support them. I'm playing the long game in that, 20 years from now, that EGS books will be on par with CGC books. So the book, not who grades it, is the deciding factor. And that's tough when you don't have a FDIC or SEC or governing body regulating companies to all be in compliance with a set standard. And it's just up to CGC, EGS, and PGX to all eventually come together where they establish a universal guidelines. But all that mumbo jumbo stuff aside, this is a fun opportunity to check out some amazing books. And these books I personally selected because not only of the historical aspects, but it shows off why EGS is absolutely amazing for you to utilize their services. There's a lot more to it than just meets the eye. And as you saw from the title of this video, that's what I'm talking about when I recommend people to use EGS. And like I said, when people come to visit the retro room here, all the books on display, they gravitate to the EGS books because, I mean, it's like art. So that's why I think that, especially in this case, in this video, why EGS is the preferred vendor to go to get your books graded and encased. So here we go. And before we start, I'd like to thank our sponsor, EGS, for providing these books for us, for grading them for us. And I think that they're wonderful. I mean, I'm blown away when I got them back. It looked like something that belonged in a museum, and you'll see in just a second. But again, it's up to us as consumers to support these companies. So CGC realizes that there's more in the neighborhood than just them. It'll make CGC better. It'll make all the whole grading community better. So it's important for us as the comic book community to support these smaller grading companies. And the reason, let me take a side note. These books I pulled because, as we know, both Marvel and DC have been offering facsimiles of iconic books. Now, these books are, let's be honest, some of these books are in the 7-digit figures, and they're priced out above a lot of people's budget range. There's no way in hell you're going to be able to get these books. I mean, it's slim to none chance. But that's why these facsimiles are excellent alternatives. Number one, you get to enjoy the book. You get to reread classic stories that basically shaped us to where we are today as far as the comic book community. The other thing is that they're just works of art. So when people come in the retro room, or when you have these certain books on display, even the smallest the person that doesn't know that much but knows a little bit about, pop culture and stuff, they gravitate to these books. And that's basically the gateway into this wonderful hobby. They just command attention. Who gives a rat's ass at their facsimiles? But for you, your room, your whole setup looks amazing when you have these books on display. So without further ado, let's look at the first book on the first 2023 edition. So the first book we're going to showcase is none other than Superman #1. Wow. I mean, such an iconic cover. And again, EGS did an amazing home run job with the custom label and just the overall aesthetic of this book. This book will definitely be displayed here in the retro room, but I wanted to showcase it to you guys to show what the hell you're getting and why EGS is definitely a viable option for even the hardcore collector. Already, it's been 24 hours since I've had this book. And then last night we had the Eagles playoff game and a couple people over. This book was like, people wanted to hold it like it was the actual Superman #1. And of course, that's the amazing beauty with these books, is that you don't have to worry about, anything happening to it. And it's art. Like the title says, would you rather have some bullshit painting that you pick up at Ross, or would you have Superman #1 on display in your home office or your office at work, whatever? It just grabs attention. So you put this in your office and people are going to be wanting to hang out and talk to you, and you'll probably get a promotion just because of fucking Superman #1. But I liked what EGS did here. They actually used the modern Superman logo to kind of like offset that this book was, the older Superman look. So it's a nice blend of old and new. And that's something that is really important to point out. And of course, yellow. Yellow is one of the pain in the ass colors as far as graders are concerned. But in this case, it came out beautiful. Now, what's interesting about this book also is that it came out a whole year after Action Comics #1 came out. And the second thing is that it's very rare for one character to have his own ongoing series. And that's what Superman #1 did. It kind of broke away from Tales of Suspense, Action Comics, where there was a whole bunch of, stories in one comic. So for the first time, one character has his own ongoing series. And the other thing, Superman #1, is the first time a mention of Martha and John Kent. Superman's parents were actually mentioned in the comic series. It's mostly about probably 60% a reprint of Action Comics #1. But again, it is up there with Action Comics #1 as far as the shape, the look, and aesthetic of modern comics today. So this book is actually responsible for a lot of things that even today we are enjoying as fans, collectors, so on and so forth. And the back, again, you have your certificate of authenticity, which I love because it tells you why your books got what they got. And it gives you a better understanding of how grading and what to look for before you send your books in for grading. And one of the things EGS pointed out is, the clean and press. This book also got a clean and press, even though it was brand new. getting a 9.6. Again, wonderful job. It just looks crisp and clear. There's no way you're going to get this mixed up with the original one, obviously. You get it just from 1939 to now. The carbon dating on paper disintegrates. So there, even the best action comics, like, there'll probably be some sense of paper wear, even though they're encased. That's what the benefit of getting your books graded in case. It's actually, in the long term, it's decreasing that, so it's not a full effect of deterioration. It kind of diminishes that half-life, if you guys remember in your chemistry class. So that's one of the added benefits of getting your books graded and encased. But Superman #1, and boy, I'm excited to have this. It's like freaking art, man. So that's what I'm really excited about this book, Superman #1. Alrighty, so if Superman had the greatest impact as far as the landscape of comic books, who would be the second character to have just as much of an impact on comics today? And that would be none other than Spider-Man, in the facsimile of Amazing Spider-Man #1. That's right. And boy, look at the custom label for ASM #1. It blends seamlessly with the cover to where it is basically an art piece. It's not just a comic book. It's not just a reprint. This is a piece of art that you could display, like I said, in your den, in your office, or at home, or at your office. But I would definitely have little stuff like that in my auditing office. So I would always have like action figures and toys. So it was funny because I would get coworkers that would come like, "Hey, clean up your room," like, like busting my chops about having toys and comics on display. But again, the look of this book is absolutely amazing. A 9.8 on ASM #1. Obviously it's unheard of because the same reasons that I said about Superman. This book, is such a game changer, coming out in 1963 off of the success. Basically, it's like a carbon copy of Action Comics and Superman #1. It came off with Amazing Fantasy, and then, of course, the impact, how kids just gravitated towards this new character, um, yielded its own ongoing series in Amazing Spider-Man #1. And of course, we've seen so many references, whether it's the Sony or the MCU, regarding this issue. And like I said, it pretty much follows the same path that Superman #1 followed, in the sense that Amazing Fantasy came out in August of 1962, with this one coming out probably like just about 6 months later in 1963. And again, it's following the adventures of a adolescent, a teenage Peter Parker, and a lot of kids were just gravitating because they identified with Amazing Spider-Man, with Peter Parker, whereas Superman was just something that is a fantasy. No one could be a Superman. No one could know what he's going through. But kids were able to identify with Peter Parker because, he had, confidence issues. He had all kinds of stuff that we all, regardless of what era, that's what makes Spider-Man such an endearing character, even to this day, is that it doesn't matter what generation. You could plug what Peter Parker goes through, especially in these early Steve Ditko and Jim Lee storylines, and you could put it into any era, and people will be able to identify. So historically, that's what makes this book so important and vital as far as modern comics is concerned. The other thing is that the value of this book, with talking about six figures, probably, based on the figures of GoCollect.com, you're probably about 300 to 400,000, and 9.6 were 9.8. The same one were probably just under $1 million. But again, that's what's the beauty of these facsimiles. Like, they are verbatim. They are exact copies of when they came out in March of 1963. So I know the paper quality is a little bit better, obviously, but just to touch this book, even if it's a facsimile, it's a connection that you get while you're in this hobby, even whether you're 8 years old to where you're 40 years old. I mean, that's what this book and that Superman #1 brings upon the person that's holding it. And again, you don't have to be into the hobby at all. People will gravitate to this book and ask a whole bunch of questions. Um, and I like how EGS made it, unless you're an idiot, but made it perfectly clear that this is a facsimile, this is a reprint. So there's no confusion, no any chance of it being any confusion. Of course, when you're EGS or any of these graders, you have to have a set standard, even though there's no governing body, but they all kind of follow the same overstreet guidelines. But I just love how this book came out, and it just looks absolutely amazing. I have a friend who has the Golden Records reprint of this, and his book it's like 1B from the original one, and he was like, wow, this looks really good. I definitely would have this next to my copy of ASM #1. So Amazing Spider-Man #1. Beautiful job. Beautiful. Now, the last book we're going to feature is somewhat obtainable. I mean, the lower grades, you're definitely able to pick this book up, but it's kind of piggybacking off of our PGX unboxings and a character I've been mentioning and kind of getting into. Actually, I am getting into it a lot. And I'm talking about Tomb of Dracula #1. This Neil Adam covers is so iconic, and with his passing, I wanted kind of to showcase. I'm into this horror type of um, category as of late, and I already have the other Tomb of Dracula. Like we showcased what Tomb in our PGX unboxing, we showcased Tomb of Dracula #3, #11, and #14. So I kind of wanted to, keep that whole line going with this one. And again, PGX did such a wonderful job. Another seamless artistic type of flow of this book to the eye, like just the label itself and with the cover. That's how people view art, is how it flows. Aesthetics from how the eye and how it goes into the brain. It just flows so nicely, and that's what I love this custom label. You have Dracula there, and I know getting the notes and speaking with Tony from EGS, they had a lot of fun with this book, and that's what I like is when they get excited grading a book, or in particular, they're like, this whole thing that you're doing with facsimiles is actually really good. It kind of shows that the book, not what the value is the important part, where it stands in history, the impact that it had. And I think that's sadly what a lot of these modern comic YouTubers, and I'm not going to mention any names, but they're putting all the money there on what the book is worth, investment type of stuff, and losing sight on what comics does, what it's really about, and its impact on the young mind, the old mind, and just the whole process it brings and instills into the fandom. And that's why I wanted to get these facsimiles done. It's paying homage to this hobby, this wonderful hobby. And I think EGS did a wonderful job on all three, hitting it out of the park. I'm sure there's some people will be saying, what the hell why would you go ahead and do this? What's the point of this? And again, there's no monetary factor, as far as, even though you could sell these books for, $50 to $70, especially to people that just want to collect to have it, just like I'm doing. So there is a demand for getting this done and offering this to customers or people, but at the same time, that's not what it's about. All three of these books have had a major impact as far as the hobby itself. And that's why doing this, giving the book the proper respect that they deserve, is my way of saying, hey, they look good, they're art, they draw attention, and they'll definitely spice up and make the retro room pop a little bit more, as if I need any more crap in here. But at the same time, it's just, I'm ecstatic. I really am. I've been doing this for almost 3 years, and I felt like a kid again getting these back. I know there wasn't much monetary aspect to it, but at the same time, to have a Superman #1, an amazing Spider-Man #1, and Tomb of Dracula #1, look as wonderful as they do, is a credit to EGS and the level of service that they give to their customers. It just shows that it's not like appeasing of board members or fiscal quarter. You're dealing with the company that is a fan itself. There's not that many people that make up EGS or PGX, but what is in there is the quality of type of people. And that's why I'm investing in this company to grow, to be one of three or four companies that kind of hold the standard for this hobby going forward. And that's why it's important for us to support these companies. So, look at that. All three of them together, it looks like freaking should be in a museum. Anyway, this is Shabu RU. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next episode of Codename New to Vero 2. Have a good one.